Publitarian Podcast.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Ronald Johnson, Publitarian, coming at you once again with another podcast. Your Tier 1 podcaster, ready to roll this morning on July 10th. I will get right to President Trump's Supreme Court nomination pick. Brett Kavanaugh looks like he is going to be the one. And just for trolling purposes, I severely, badly wanted Trump to nominate some conservative Asian woman from a court somewhere that nobody heard from, just to watch the reactions and watch the meltdown. Because obviously the other side of the aisle was going to turn this into a partisan fight, no matter who he picked. He could have put Jesus Christ himself as the nomination and somebody would have found something wrong with him. So here we go. Brett Kavanaugh is going to be the guy that Trump picks. Some never-Trumpers are already up in arms about it. They think he's not right-wing enough. And like I said before, obviously left-wingers think he's not left-wing enough. And the problem that both sides of the aisle are missing is that this is the Supreme Court. This is interpreting the Constitution. That's what the Supreme Court is supposed to do. They're not supposed to be left-wing activists. Transversely, they are not supposed to be right-wing activists. They're just supposed to be judges that interpret the Constitution. And that's it. That's what they're supposed to do. And that's what both sides of the aisle are missing. And I hate that for us. But I do realize that we are in an ideological war, and perhaps that's what's needed now to shift the balance of power. But I hate that it's come to that we have to see everything through this political prism. And speaking of that, Shannon Bream of Fox News was going to do live coverage from the event, and the protests had already started before anybody even knew who the pick was going to be. And she felt, according to her own tweets, that the situation was getting volatile, so she decided to shut it down, so they didn't do any live coverage from outside the steps. And that's really a shame. Also, these activists, these left-wing protesters were already ready to go. They had protest signs ready to go for whoever it was. Like, I saw a couple of pictures where it was like #stop, like professionally printed out on the sign, and then written in, whoever the Supreme Court pick was going to be. That was floating around Twitter. Also floating around Twitter, which I thought was hilarious, was some news releases ready to go from the left side. Whoever, like I said, the nomination was going to be. One of them was the Women's March statement. Women's March statement on Trump's extremist SCOTUS nominee. Washington, D.C. in response to Donald Trump's nomination of, and then there's a double X right there. And I guess whoever was releasing the statement forgot to put the person's name. So in other words, this thing was ready to go. They just had to insert a name and then release it. I just found that hilarious. It's on my Instagram if you want to check it out. There was another one that says, DFA will fight Kavanaugh. Says she represents a generational assault on justice, freedom, core democratic values. The reason that she was in there, it was widely speculated that Trump was going to be nominating this other lady. And so, like I said, they already had their ammunition ready to go. And just watching the left implode like this and just using their same old tactics on a president that is immune to the tactics gives me so many degrees of pleasure. I can't even talk about it. I'm so glad to see our side of the aisle winning for once. My own feelings on Kavanaugh, looks like the only black mark I really see on his record. I've seen some reports where it says that he upheld something having to do with Obamacare, but they didn't really get into the meat and potatoes of it in the article. Other than that, it looks like he's a pretty pro-Second Amendment judge, and he's going to just rule however the Constitution dictates, which, again, is what a Supreme Court justice is supposed to do. So, like I said, the never-Trumpers would never be happy no matter what. Liberals would never be happy no matter what. I'm just glad that we have a constitutional justice going to the Supreme Court and not some crazy activist like what has been nominated in the past. Also, I have been wanting to share this clip with you guys for 2 weeks and I keep forgetting it, so this is kind of a day late and a dollar short, but here it is. Ann Coulter, no matter how you feel about Ann Coulter, or even if you know who she is, she's a conservative, a very opinionated woman. She's written books, she goes on all the talk shows, and love her or hate her, she did a good job with this TMZ journalist that tried to do some gotcha journalism with her. It looked like, according to the video, that she was just ambushed and started doing a on-the-spot interview. And this was regarding the kids being separated at the border between U.S. and Mexico. It was like the famous talking point until the liberals weren't getting away with it and they had to switch over to the Supreme Court pick. So it's just like a minute long, but it's great. She just demolishes this guy at the end, so just wait for the payoff at the end. Here it goes.
Have you seen the pictures of these so-called detention camps?
Yes, have you heard the tape? It's weird. I think they need to improve their scripts. They're saying mommy and daddy. Nope, you want to put it in Spanish next time.
People are saying that because the biggest thing is these kids are being separated from their parents.
They're being separated from coyotes and drug mules. I mean, that has already been proved.
And their parents. They're in there by themselves.
You know what? The parents could stay in Mexico. You don't get to get out of committing crimes in this country because you have a baby. I mean, why don't we let out Bernie Madoff? His kids suffered. One committed suicide.
All of the former first ladies have spoken against this practice. They say it's unjust, it's wrong.
Thank God first ladies aren't elected officials.
I mean, it's a serious issue.
It is a serious issue. They are trying to wreck our country through a political stunt. That's what's going on.
Do you think this will be a stain on our country's history? Kind of like...
It's going to be the end of our country's history if we let these hordes in. It will never, ever stop. This is a political movement to transform our country into Mexico. It's right there for any journalist who wants to look up what Pueblos Sin Fronteras is about. People without borders.
Do you have kids?
Oh, give me a break.
I'm just asking. Do you have kids?
Do you have a vagina? Because I don't want you talking about anything having to do with women if you don't. No, I have a brain.
Damn! He was not ready. He was not ready for that, and and demolished. And she's so right on the money about that. That's like a classic tactic of the left. Well, if you don't have X, Y, and Z experience, you can't talk about X, Y, and Z. Well, that just doesn't work. It's just not logical. Like, I know that drugs are bad. I haven't done heroin, but I know that heroin is bad. It's just they don't equate. They don't add up. Also, apologies if you can hear someone mowing their lawn in the background. Like I said, this isn't a professional studio. I just do the best I can here with what I have. And it sounds like someone is making the rounds outside with their lawnmower. And budgetary, I cannot do anything about it at this point. So just enjoy the lawn mowing noises, but think about the smell of freshly mowed grass. See, isn't that better? And some recent Instagram drama for you guys on my Instagram account. Publitarian. That's probably why most of you are here anyway, is because of my Instagram account, where I'm funnier on there than I am here. I always try to be funnier on here, and then I end up getting into these serious topics for debate. Like the South African genocide is on my list of things to talk about. Like, I'm doing these funny memes on Instagram, and then I want to talk about the South African genocide when you guys come here to listen to me. So anyway, it is what it is, I guess. So I started some Instagram drama. It always happens. If I post anything anti-socialism, because my page is public, the liberals will come out of the woodworks to defend socialism. And the thing is, history is on my side. You can't show me where socialism works. And I love that liberals like to call it democratic socialism now. The Bernie movement has now given us democratic socialism. We've got Ocasio-Cortez winning that New York District 14 seat, overthrowing like a senator that's been there forever. And like I said in my previous podcast, it just shows that we still have work to do in this country. Socialism does not work. One of the classic lines from Margaret Thatcher. is the problem with socialism is sooner or later you run out of other people's money. That also gets attributed to Churchill as well. I do believe it was Thatcher, though, that said that. Does not work. It just does not work, guys. And you can't argue this with me. It's just history will prove you wrong time and time again. Any form of socialism where government is controlling the means of production or picking the winners or losers will fail eventually. Even in this attempted experiment of crony fascism that we are starting to flirt with here, where government is in bed with big business and government gets to pick the winners and losers and business gets to lobby government, and the circle of stupid goes round and round. Anyway, Venezuela is like the example that's happening now about socialism not working. It's happening like right now in front of us. Venezuela has oil. Like, oil should equal wealth on this globe. And because of socialism, they are poor now. They're having to, barbecue their dogs to eat. Their inflation rate is, gosh, what is it? It's like something in the thousands of percentages. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And there's no excuse for it. It's just poorly managed government, or perfectly managed socialism, or perfectly implemented socialism, I should say. Look at countries in Africa. Like, Africa itself as a continent has like abundant natural resources. And just the manner of government that they choose to be governed by is corrupt. And they can't get past that. And we can throw all the food and money we want to there. It won't change until the people there want to change it. I swerved way off the topic of socialism that I was talking about. But anyway, there we go. It all ties in. So anyway, my Instagram was getting trolled pretty hard the other day because that's how you bring out the crazies. If you start talking anti-socialism, they will show up. And it's always people that have never experienced real socialism. And the reason I know that is because if they really had experienced it, they would not be trying to implement it here in the United States of America. You could put democratic in front of it, it is still socialism. It's still government controlling. This dude showed up on my Instagram last night. Well, democratic socialism is different. It's really just government running healthcare. Oh, really? Government running healthcare? The one big, huge chunk of our economy that government should absolutely not be involved in, picking winners and losers, is your healthcare. That you're okay with that. Look around the globe at government-run healthcare. It has worked to some degree in countries that have 20 million people, not 330 million people, and also the country where we're doing the most medical breakthroughs. And we could be doing a lot more medical breakthroughs if government was not involved and in the way. And that would swerve me into medical insurance and a whole other just host of topics that I don't want to talk about. But anyway, the socialism thing always brings out the crazies, and I have unique life experience, and my wife and her family have unique life experience to where we have seen these countries. We've actually visited these countries. The family has been to these countries and has seen it firsthand. My wife is one of the few American women that has actually set foot in North Korea and seen firsthand how Marxism, socialism, dictatorships work. They don't. They only work for the people on top. Same thing with any form of democratic socialism or socialism in general. Always works for the people on top, does not work for anyone else. And the people that want to implement it are not giving of their own time and money. They just want you to give your time and money while they manage your time and money. They love to put, instead of putting their money where their mouth is, they like to put my money where their mouth is. And I can't stand it. And I wish people would wake up to it. Anyway, socialism rant over for today. I had other stuff that I wanted to cover in this podcast, but time is already running short, and I wanted to get to one more important piece. I do a lot of plugs for other podcasts on this show, a lot of free advertising. One of them is Dan Bongino. He does a really good podcast, and I'm not trying to rehash his show here, but he mentioned something on his podcast that I felt I needed to share with my audience as well. And the only reason being, I'm not trying to steal his show. It's the reason is I didn't know this. This totally escaped my radar. And part of my job here is to be informed and then inform my audience. And that had not happened. This is a story that has just not hit anyone's radar. Apparently it was up on Drudge or The Hill for a little bit, but nobody's talking about it. And it should be freaking huge. It should be everywhere. But nobody's talking about it, so I thought I would address it today. It's from John Solomon, and it's from The Hill. If you go to thehill.com, Hill TV, and look up John Solomon, he's an opinion contributor there. You'll be able to read it. But it's regarding the Obamagate, Spygate scandal, more revelations regarding the FBI and how they were handling the supposed Trump-Russia collusion investigation. Anyway, I'm just going to read a little bit from the piece here. Multiple reviews of whether FBI agents' political bias affected the Trump-Russia collusion case remain in their infancy, but investigators already have unearthed troubling internal communications long withheld from public view. And we know about these. These are the text messages, between the field agents that keep getting leaked out to us. And, some members of Congress have seen the really damning ones, but most have not. Anyway, the piece continues. We already know from FBI counterintelligence agent Peter Strzok's now infamous text messages with his fellow agent and reported lover Lisa Page that Strzok, the man driving that Russia collusion investigation, disdained Donald Trump and expressed willingness to use his law enforcement powers to stop the Republican from becoming president. That's Peter Strzok's own words. That's in the text message to Lisa Page. Don't worry, we'll stop him. Police state tactics, anybody? I mean, this should be huge. This should be like on everybody's radar screen, and like nobody's talking about it. Anyway, the piece continues. The question that lingers unanswered, did those sentiments affect official actions? Well, the official IG report when it came out, the Inspector General, the guy that gave the brief summary in his now famous quote said that there was, quote, no political bias. And I think he was just playing with his language here because obviously there's bias. If you look at the IG report, it's like undeniable that there's bias. But I think he's trying to protect the institution of the DOJ. And he's saying no political bias when technically you could say that's true, but there's definitely a personal bias. But if you look at some of these people on how the FBI agents, husbands and wives give money to Democratic campaigns, I don't see how you can't see that as a political bias. But for whatever reason, it's just not showing up on anybody's radar, or they don't think that's important. Anyway, the piece continues. I keep interrupting. Memos the FBI is now producing to the Department of Justice Inspector General and multiple Senate and House committees offer what sources involved in the production, review, or investigation described to me as, quote, damning or, quote, troubling evidence. They show Strzok and his counterintelligence team rushing in the fall of 2016 to find, quote, derogatory information from informants or a pretext to accelerate the probe and get a surveillance warrant on figures tied to the future president. So is anybody seeing this here? It's fall of 2016. The FBI is rushing to try and get some kind of dirt on Trump so they can affect the election. And we're still worried about Russian collusion that there's no evidence of. And we have evidence right here of the FBI colluding to try and take out a presidential candidate. It's right here, and no one is talking about it. Anyway, I lost my place. One of those figures was Carter Page, an academic and energy consultant from New York. He was briefly a volunteer foreign policy advisor for the GOP nominee's campaign and visited Moscow the summer before the election because, no one is allowed to visit Russia. As soon as you visit Russia, you are colluding with Russia somehow. Anyway, that's been the spin. The FBI team pounced on what it saw as an opportunity as soon as Page wrote a letter to then FBI Director James Comey. James Comey, the innocent guy that doesn't know anything, and he's above reproach and has the most integrity of any guy out there. Oh, jeez. A higher loyalty. Yeah, James. Anyway. Then FBI Director James Comey complaining about the completely false leak. That was in quotes. At a minimum, the letter provides us a pretext to interview, Stroke wrote to Lisa Page on September 26, 2016. So you guys are seeing this. They're looking for something. They're looking for some kind of way to wiretap Trump and get in there to his team so they can find dirt on him. Anyway, I keep interrupting myself because I can't believe anybody's talking about this. Anyway, the story continues. Within weeks, that pretext, often a synonym for an excuse, had been upsized to a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA court warrant, giving the FBI the ability to use some of its most awesome powers to monitor Carter Page and his activities. So here we go. There's the police state in action. To date, the former Trump advisor has been accused of no wrongdoing, despite being subjected to nearly a year of surveillance. Yep, you heard that right, folks. Anyway, some internal memos detail the pressure being applied by the FBI to DOJ prosecutors to get the warrant on Carter Page buttoned up before Election Day. Yeah, CYA? Jeez. In one email exchange with the subject line Crossfire FISA, Stroke and Lisa Page discussed talking points to get then FBI Director Andrew McCabe to persuade a high-ranking DOJ official to sign off on the warrant. Crossfire Hurricane was one of the code names for 4 separate investigations the FBI conducted related to Russia matters in the 2016 election. At a minimum, that keeps the hurry the F up pressure on him, Stroke emailed Page on October 14, 2016, less than 4 weeks before Election Day. Yeah, they're keeping that pressure on. They have to find some kind of dirt on this guy. Because, God forbid he become the president. Anyways, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you online because that ends up getting boring and tedious. So just bear with me 1 second while I scan down through here. Because it's good. You should do yourself a favor and go to the website and read these. It's an extraordinary exchange, the Hill article continues, if for no other reason than this. The very day after Trump wins the presidency, some top FBI officials are involved in the sort of gumshoeing normally reserved for field agents, and their goal is to find derogatory information about someone who had worked for the president-elect. So, everybody's asking, why are they doing this? What is the point of this? And I think we all know the answer. There's bias there. Just like the IG report says, but the summary doesn't say, to protect the agency for whatever reason. Okay, scanning the rest of the article. Okay. Clear evidence also exists that an investigation into still unproven collusion between a foreign power and a U.S. presidential candidate was driven less by secret information from Moscow and more by politically tainted media leaks. And by the way, that's also in the story as well. The FBI made up a story, leaked it to the media, and then turned around and quoted the media as their source. Like, you can't make this stuff up, folks. It's there for you to read. It's all in black and white, text messages and exchanges between the agents. So do yourself a favor and go read that piece. It's thehill.com. John Solomon is the author, and he does a good job with that piece. And I don't know why this isn't like breaking news. I guess we still fall into the trap of letting the liberals control the media and control the narrative, and we're still more concerned with kids being separated at the border and the Supreme Court pick than we are with this. But we have actual evidence here of police state tactics done by our own Department of Justice. And I am still confident, though, that there is things going on behind the scenes. That Stealth Sessions is doing his thing behind the scenes, and that things are happening. And trust me, folks, the president is well aware of this. I am 100% convinced that he's just playing some 4D chess right now and biding his time and getting that trap set up to where it's just slowly closing it around all of these police state liberal Marxist cronies. And once that trap closes all the way, by the time they realize they're in the trap, it's going to be too late. And the ones that have figured it out have already retired, and I've already moved on to other things. So anyway, I think that will do it for me today on the podcast. I've ran a little bit longer than I normally do, but I wanted to squeeze that article in at the end. I had a billion other things that I still wanted to talk about. There was more news of the day stuff. There was more opinion pieces. There was more like philosophical stuff that I wanted to do. But I simply just have run out of time for today. Again, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast and listening to me rant about socialism and whatever else that I want to talk about. I am publitarian@gmail.com or thepublitarian@gmail.com. I am also publitarian.libsyn.com, libsyn.com, to go straight to the podcast. Please do not judge me by my podcast website. It is extremely lame, and I know that. I just threw it up there real quick so I would have something for you guys to click on. I am working on that, and it will be better. But anyway, feel free to leave me some criticism, good or bad. Let me know how you like the show. I really am enjoying doing this, and I appreciate you guys being here. I'm also Publitarian on Twitter and on Minds and on Gab.ai. So feel free to give me a follow, and thanks for listening, guys. Thank you so much. Peace.
You've been listening to Publitarian Podcast. Copyright 2018.